So welcome to this webinar on the latest KFS rules. So let's just tell you how we'll split this webinar. There'll be two components. In the first component, I'll be taking you through the actual compliance requirements and briefly touching upon what you need to do to comply. This will take around 12 to 15 minutes. And in the second component, Siddhant will be taking you through how you can actually comply on the Leegality platform. So if you're just here to learn what the rules say, then the first 12 to 15 minutes are for you. But if you also want to see an actual demo of how a digital KFS flow would work and how you can set it up, then after 15 minutes, we'll be showing you the full demo. And then, of course, opening the floor up for an open Q&A. Meanwhile, you can ask questions in the Q&A box below. We may take some of them in the middle if it's relevant to what we're speaking about at that point in time. So do ask in the Q&A box whenever a question strikes you. And we'll also be opening the mics up for open Q&A at the end of the session as well. So first, a quick introduction. I'm Aditya, Director of Marketing at Leegality, and I'm joined today by Siddhant, our Director of Product. Before joining Leegality, we both had years of experience working as practicing lawyers, and we both worked on RBI regulations and compliance extensively in our previous avatar as well. And just a quick introduction, because a lot of people are new to Leegality. I'll just give a quick 1-minute introduction. So Leegality is a document infrastructure platform. We help Indian banks and NBFCs digitize each and every step needed for document execution in one unified flow, from eSign, eStamp to other important things like preventing fraud in the document journey or making the document journey drop-off proof, right? We are currently working with various verticals and departments of top banks and NBFCs. If you see your organization's logo on this slide, that means some or many verticals in your organization are using us. So if your vertical wants to start using it, it's super easy because most onboarding formalities have been completed. So the core theme of this webinar today is compliance. Leegality also is a compliance first solution because fundamentally the process of paperwork is a compliance issue, right? RBI heavily scrutinizes your paperwork and paperwork processes, especially as you shift digital. And you also rely on paperwork to enforce recovery in court. So our core aim is to help you build a compliant digital paperwork flow that helps you avoid regulator crackdown and ensures ease of enforcement. With that out of the way, let's dive straight into the KFS rules, right? First, let's establish the guardrails of the KFS rules, right? Who exactly do these rules apply to? So quite simply, the RBI KFS rules apply to retail loan products and MSME loan products, term loans, that is, right? And this is there very explicitly in the rules. They do not apply to credit card products. There's a very specific exception carved out in the rules. And they don't apply to corporate loan products by virtue of only applying to retail and MSME loans, right? So at the outset, if you are handling retail or MSME term loan products, then this webinar and these rules are extremely relevant for you. If you handle credit cards or non-MSME corporate loans, then these rules do not apply to your vertical. If you've joined this webinar, you can probably drop off right now. So that's who the rules apply to. Let's discuss when these rules start applying, right? So the rules kick in from October 1st, 2024. That is for all loans sanctioned on or after this date, the KFS will have to be compliant with these new rules. So till October 1st, for any loans you're sanctioning or disbursing, let's say tomorrow or next week, don't worry about these rules or guidelines, right? You don't really need to do anything tomorrow or day after. Just ensure that your KFS processes are in place to be compliant from October 1st onwards. And we'll tell you how to do that in this webinar. So, right, that's the who and when, the guardrails for these rules. Now let's dive in. If these apply to you, let's dive into what the actual compliance requirements are. One important disclaimer before we start, we are not your lawyers. We will give you our view of the rules. We will give you our logic for why we believe so. And we will give you the logic behind how we think you should comply. But ultimately, the final decision for your flow will need to be taken by our compliance and legal teams. What this webinar will do is give you something very useful and actionable to actually take to your compliance and legal teams. And if you are a compliance team, then we will give you something actionable through which you can actually take action, a checklist for compliance at the end of this webinar. So here's the overview of what the KFS rules say. There are 7 key compliance requirements. I've listed them all here. I won't read all of them. Without wasting time, let me just dive into each one by one. First requirement is a requirement of format, right? RE shall provide a KFS to all prospective borrowers as per the standardized format in Annexure A. Similarly, there's a requirement for a computation sheet of APR and amortization schedule given in Annexure B and C. This is a very simple and very clear requirement, right? One, if you already have a KFS or a document with similar purpose, it's very simple. Simply update your format. That's it. Take your current format, vet it against the RBI annexures in the rules, which we'll also send after this webinar, and simply make changes to fit your format to the new format. Super simple, right? If you don't have a KFS and you're disbursing a MSME or retail loan product, now you need to have one. So for retail and MSME term loans, simply take the format. If you don't have a KFS, simply take the format RBI has provided and add it to your loan workflow. So that's it. That's a very simple requirement. The first requirement, a simple format change if you have a KFS, and introduction of KFS into your loan workflow if you don't have a KFS. Physically, it's obviously straightforward to comply. How do you comply with this digitally? We've seen two things. One, digitally, some banks and NBFCs digitize and generate the KFS on their LOS or LMS end. And when they're using Leegality, they pass on the PDF directly to us. In this case, simply update the format wherever you store the initial template, be it your LOS, LMS, or any other software, right? Another way, of course, is through Leegality. If you're using Leegality, a lot of customers of Leegality here, you can simply update or save the KFS template on Leegality itself in a KFS workflow, right? Here, you will send your data from your LOS, LMS to Leegality when you're populating and sending the KFS for signing later, right? We've also built a new template engine where all you need to do is upload a PDF and drag and drop variable fields. You can simply send it to us, and within a matter of a day or two, we'll have your KFS template ready for you. So first requirement, format change, and very simple to comply even digitally, right? Second requirement is the local language requirement, right? Rules say that the KFS shall be written in a language understood by such borrowers. So there are two things you'll need to do. One is ensure that the KFS itself, the contents of the document, are in a language that the borrower understands. And two, and this is a unique requirement to a digital flow, right? Because in a digital flow, the execution process forms a key part of the enforceability of the agreement. For example, in eSigned, there is a specific consent that the applications like Leegality or any application you might be using take as part of the document process, which is shown in the audit trail. There are also buttons and instructions that take the borrower through that process, right? All of this likely also needs to be in a local language to fully comply with the spirit of this requirement, where each and every step is in a language the borrower understands. Some compliance teams differ with us on this, but especially if you're an NBFC, the Fair Practice Code also anyway says that the communication should be in a local language. Ultimately, you will need to take this call, right? We've seen RBI recently crack down on a few NBFCs for not having the interface and consent as well in a local language. Some of you may still ask the question, why not English? Showing you some stats on the screen. It's a study done by Google. Just to be clear, it's not that I have Googled this. This is Google, the company itself, doing a study about digital use in India. Stats are pretty self-explanatory, right? English simply isn't the primary fluency of most Indians. And especially in retail loans like microfinance, English is not going to be the primary fluency of your borrowers. So English simply won't do an English only KFS, but don't worry, compliance is quite simple. So for the KFS itself, you need to ensure the template or document is in a local language, right? Simple, same as last process. Change it with your LOS, LMS, change it on Leegality, the actual template. For the interface itself, like eSign consent and more, Leegality has built a feature which we'll show you in the demo called local language interface. With this, you can change the entire consent and interface language to any of the 11 languages listed on screen in just one click. That's it. No deeper integration needed, no complexity. Simply set the language of your choice. Siddhant will show you exactly how this works in the demo. There's a final question that actually arises, especially in multilinguistic cities like in the metros, right? How do I actually know the fluency of my borrower? Again, a lot of you are already taking care of this at a branch level. So there's nothing you really need to change about your current process if you're already localizing it. In case you don't localize, what we suggest is two things, right? One is you can set up multiple workflows. On Leegality, we support this, each pertaining to a language. If it's an API journey, all of that gets resolved automatically. A particular workflow will run depending on a button that your branch or officer on the ground simply presses. Another option is simply to prepare a consolidated KFS kit consisting of an English KFS and a KFS in 2-3 other languages based on the geography that you're in. Simple. So that's two ways you can go about it. So that's it. That's two requirements done. Both requirements, one of format and partially of interface, right? Changing the format of the KFS to annexure ABC and localizing the KFS in a language your borrower understands. So these were the very simple to do requirements. May require some time for you to comply, but very simple to do, right? Now we come to a slightly more ambiguous requirement, right? The third and fourth requirement, which is a question of when does this KFS actually come into play in your loan workflow, right? Third requirement says that the KFS has to be provided to the borrower for them to make up their mind before executing the loan contract. And the fourth one says that the KFS should also be included as a summary box in the loan agreement. So there's one major confusion that arises here. Does the KFS need to be separated from the loan agreement kit and acknowledged and executed separately? Are there two different document kits now? Or would it be sufficient to include it at the beginning of the loan agreement and have them acknowledged together as long as it's explained to people before they sign the loan agreement? If you look at the fourth requirement, it says the KFS also needs to be included as a summary box. Keyword here is also. So as per this requirement, when you send your loan agreement, the KFS will be there at the beginning, which is very important for enforcement and customer disclosure. That's great. But again, coming back to the word also, if the KFS is also to be included as the first summary of the loan agreement, then it implies that it exists independently before it exists as a summary of the loan agreement, right? That is, does the KFS have to be shown to the borrower, acknowledged, and only then can the loan agreement be sent? Or can the KFS be part of the loan agreement? So there are two ways in which you can actually answer this ambiguity. We've laid out both ways. Your compliance team will have to take the call finally. We've termed them the cautious approach and the liberal approach. In the cautious approach, you share the KFS with the borrower, you get that KFS acknowledged. And when you get that acknowledgement, only then do you proceed with the loan agreement process, right? That is, KFS is now a separate document kit from your loan agreement. They're both two document kits that you will use. And here, two digital acknowledgements will be taking place. So if you're using eSigned, two eSigns will be taking place with two separate authentications, right? One for the KFS and one separately for the loan agreement. The loan agreement, of course, you'd also need to include the KFS separately on the loan agreement as well, even in this journey, right? In this approach, you are effectively adding another document and another document signing process to your existing customer journey for your loans, right? But if you do it, you are 100% compliant. There's absolutely no ambiguity there. The other way is the liberal approach, right? In this approach, you simply make the KFS the first document in a consolidated loan kit. So have the KFS on top. Here, the borrower has the opportunity to read and review the KFS before executing the loan agreement. And here, the KFS is also, because you have it on top, is also a summary box complying with the fourth requirement. In this approach, both the KFS and the loan agreement are part of the same kit, which means one eSign authentication is needed to eSign the entire kit. And you're also not adding a new document to your digital flow. It's part of your existing digital flows. You're merely making your document kit slightly bigger to include the KFS. And if you already have the KFS as part of this kit, then really there's no change except the format change, which we discussed earlier. What we've seen from market practice so far, and we've had a few banks and NBFCs talking to us about how they'll comply, is this, right? There's one middle approach to both these paths where you don't choose either, you choose both. So how does that work? So for assisted journeys where there's a bank or an NBFC officer actually meeting the customer, even if the eSign is involved, there's an actual meeting between the bank agent. A lot of banks and NBFCs are thinking of opting for a consolidated kit, right? The liberal flow where both are part of the same kit. This is because the officer will have an opportunity to explain the terms of the KFS before the eSign actually happens. But for digital journeys where the customer is doing the entire documentation without actually interacting with anyone on your side, they are opting for a cautious approach with separate documents and separate eSigns for each. Because in a digital journey, there's no actual guarantee of anyone explaining the terms of the KFS to the borrower. So you need to collect explicit separate acknowledgement and consent on both the KFS and the loan agreement separately. So this is a framework for you to think about this requirement. Both options are viable. You can take both options depending on your use case as well. Ultimately, the final call has to be with your legal team. We've laid out both the approaches. So that's the requirement of when does the KFS fit into your workflow. Two possible interpretations, depending on use case, both could happen, right? Let's look at requirements 5 and 6, right? Because we assumed that there will be an eSign involved. Why exactly did we do this? That's because of requirements 5 and 6. In requirements 5 and 6, what does it say? Like it says 1.5. The KFS must be explained to the borrower and the lender will need to obtain acknowledgement from the borrower. And the requirement 6, for charges that are changed during the term of the loan, you will need an explicit consent from the borrower to consent to this revision of charges. So 1, when you're initiating the loan, the KFS will need an acknowledgement. And 2, when you're modifying terms of the loan, you will need an explicit consent. So the question is, does ClickWrap work for this? As per our reading, no. Because think about it, the core purpose behind these requirements and the KFS rules is to fundamentally safeguard the borrower. That's the RBI's main priority here, right? Everything is geared towards borrower welfare and ensuring they haven't really been entering into any provisions without their knowledge. Given this purpose, the enforcement and audit focus of the RBI will be around ensuring that both the acknowledgement and consent are very watertight, right? And to see this, to practically see this, the RBI will need to audit your KFS and your KFS process to actually see if this acknowledgement and consent have actually been obtained as per the rules, which means any acknowledgement or consent that you collect will also need to be verifiable during an audit. Similarly, the KFS now, as we'll see later, is the single source of truth for terms of your loan in terms of the numbers. So at enforcement stage as well, you will need the acknowledgement and consent to be verifiable. Extremely important for enforcement as well. And according to us, a ClickWrap simply does not achieve this, right? You need a more robust consent and acknowledgement. Of course, final call remains with your compliance team. This is just our logic behind it. So if ClickWrap does not work, you will need to look at verifiable digital authentication, commonly known in common parlance as eSigns, right? And there's a wide variety of eSigns. The types are mentioned on the list that you see on screen are indicative. At Leegality, we provide you a way to do all types of these eSigns, right? All of these with a verifiable, auditable, enforceable audit trail. What method you choose ultimately depends on the risk appetite of your legal and compliance teams. All methods mentioned are valid, but they vary in terms of how easy they are to enforce in a court of law. Since the KFS acts as a single source of truth, it will be a very critical document in enforcement scenarios. So, for example, where enforcement is your number one priority, where you know that it's going to go to enforcement at some stage, your legal and compliance teams are likely to opt for an Aadhaar eSign or a secure OTP authenticated multiple authentication virtual signature, or even a physical sign upload that's also authenticated, right? These are with degrees of difference easier to enforce in court than other simpler modes of digital authentication. But in some cases, especially in microfinance segment, where enforcement is a priority, but it's a secondary priority, where your main priority is one, that the acknowledgement should be as per the rules, and two, to minimize customer drop-offs. Here, your teams may opt for simple virtual signatures or secure digital acknowledgements on your KFS. These are much lower cost compared to Aadhaar eSign, much simpler electronic methods, and they can still be easily audited by the RBI, right? Siddhant will be showing you these methods in the demo in a few minutes. And finally, one scenario where you are executing KFS as part of the same kit, this choice doesn't really apply, right? Because if KFS and loan agreement are in the same kit, the eSign you use for the kit will apply to the KFS as well, right? And so all of these methods, what method you choose depends on your internal risk calculus, applies to both the acknowledgement and applies to the consent you take when you're modifying. If you're sending a KFS addendum or a revised KFS, that explicit consent will also be one of these methods. What method you choose ultimately depends on your compliance appetite. So now we're just 2 minutes away from the demo. Thank you for bearing with me so far. Just one small requirement to conclude before we get there. Thanks for your patience so far. This requirement basically states that the KFS needs to have a unique proposal number, and that unique proposal numbered KFS should have a validity of a certain number of days. So for loans with a term greater than 1 week, there's a validity of at least 3 days. And for loans less than 1 week, it has to be 1 day, right? So what does this mean? So basically, when the KFS is shown to the borrower for a loan with term of say 1 year, right? Then the borrower is entitled to say under these rules, hey, I need 3 days to think about this, and they can get back to you in 3 days. They are not obligated to, nor can they be forced or compelled to sign the KFS then and there. This is a period of time that the RBI is giving to the borrower to read and peruse the KFS. And given the purpose behind these rules in general, the borrower focus, the RBI will probably want you to make sure that the borrower knows that this time is available to them when you're explaining the KFS to them. In most cases, the borrower probably will not take this time because in most cases, they are more eager for the loan than you are to disburse it. But on your end, you still need to inform the borrower that they have this time available to think about things. Another thing is after the borrower exercises this time and acknowledges the KFS, then it automatically becomes binding on you, binding on everyone, right? It acts as the single source of truth for the loan. Very important at the stage of enforcement. If the borrower rejects it and there's some modification and you resend the KFS, just make sure that the unique proposal number changes because each KFS needs to have a unique proposal number. With legality, you can comply with both aspects of this requirement. You can ensure there's a unique proposal number on the KFS, and you can set an expiry date to sync with the validity time you have given the borrower for the KFS. Proposal number is mandatory. Each KFS, after it's rejected, you need a new proposal number. You will need to do this. Expiration date is not mandatory. You have to give a minimum of 3 days, yes, but you can also give the borrower more time. Depends on your internal processes. So thanks for bearing with me. With that out of the way, I think the demo, which will be of particular interest to ops people on this call and risk and product people on this call. We'll dive into the demo. Over to you, Siddhant. I think there's one question. Is it applicable to an LAS transaction? Loan against securities is the LAS transaction. I think that would be a retail loan. Depends on how you're classifying it. If it's an individual borrower retail loan. So if you classify it as a retail loan, then yes, it applies to your loan against securities. Siddhant, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Aditya. Thanks so much for that very helpful summary of the KFS, and thanks to everyone who's joined. Let me just quickly share my screen and we can dive right into Legality's product and see how we can set up a really quick workflow on how to comply with the KFS guidelines. Is my screen visible, Aditya?
Yeah, Sid, it's visible.
Perfect. What you see here before you is Legality's dashboard. This is our control station. For those of you who've not seen a Legality demo before, this is the main portal that all of our users get access to. This allows you to track all your documents that you've sent via Legality. You can see your workflows, you can see your templates, and this gives you a full picture on your usage of Legality, right? Now, very quickly, let's introduce you to the concept of workflows. A workflow is a set of configurations revolving around your document, your stamp papers, and your sign configurations that allows you to create a really streamlined flow for repeatedly executing a particular kind of document. So, for example, for a KFS workflow, what you can do is select your key fact statement template, which, as Aditya mentioned in the previous segment, it needs to be in a specific format now. So, you can create a workflow with that specific template. You can specify what kind of signature you want to apply to the document. If you want to stamp a particular document, you can also select which kind of stamp paper you want to select. You can bundle all of that up as a one-time process and then repeatedly use that workflow whenever you want to sign documentation with a particular customer, right? So here we'll see a particular example of a key fact statement. We've created a workflow for the purposes of the demo, and we'll see how what kind of configurations we've set here and how to run it. The best thing about Legality is that we give you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to do this. So you can, for example, create a workflow and then execute that workflow using an API integration as well, right? You can do this in an automated way. You can also do this via the dashboard, which is what we are going to see here today, right? So with that said, let's really quickly dive into a sample key fact statement workflow that we've created for the purpose of the demo. So here, the first thing that you'll notice is that when I try to run the key fact statement workflow, whatever pre-configurations were made for this workflow are already pre-selected. So for instance, I see this document here right on top called key fact statement. This is a template which your compliance team or legal team has created in accordance with the RBI guidelines. This is pre-selected here. If there is any requirement of stamping, then that can also be configured in the workflow. For the purposes of the demo, we have configured a revenue stamp here, so you can see that it's already pre-selected. So at the time when you're interacting with a customer, you don't really need to get into all of this. You're just running with the preset workflow that your legal team has created on all those aspects, right? Now, what you need to do is enter the variable data or the dynamic data that is specific to each customer. So let's say this is customer 3. We give it this document name. You can give the document an internal reference number. Calling back to one of the key requirements that Aditya had flagged, you need to pass a unique reference number for each key fact statement. So you can key that in here. If you are doing an API integration, I just want to re-emphasize that you don't need to manually pass this data. All of this can be directly passed via an API as well, right? So now once we've configured the unique reference number and the document name, we are ready to go to the next step. Now here you need to populate the key fact statement that has been prepared by your compliance and legal teams as a template on Leegality. We have a really easy to use template engine that allows you to create templates as per your legal and compliance requirements. Here we have a KFS template that is specified by the RBI guidelines. So we have the actual key fact statement here.
Siddhant, just 1 second. I think we have a quick question on your
Yeah.
previous slide. I think so. It mentioned revenue stamp was toggled. So just to clarify, yes, you can use revenue stamps or stamp paper with Leegality. Stamp paper across 31 states and union territories, and revenue stamp, of course, across all states and union territories. Possible to do digitally. Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks, Patel. Okay, so moving on, here we have the entire KFS created as a template. This is possible to do really quickly via our easy to use template engine. And we also have a dedicated team that can help you create templates on request. But here at this stage, when you're running the workflow, all you need to do is fill the variable data types in the template, right? So for instance, let's select a term loan here. Let's select the account number, key in the sanction amount, the loan term, let's say it's 12 months, and the annual interest rate, which let's say is 12%, right? Now, again, just re-emphasizing, all of this data can be passed via APIs as well. Every single data field that I'm going to enter here can be passed via APIs, right? Now, once we've configured all of these data points, we are ready to go to the next step. And here we see all the signing configurations that your workflow has. So for instance, here we are going to see two different kinds of journeys with two different kinds of eSign types. First, we are going to see a journey with quick sign enabled. So here in this workflow, we have the first signer where quick sign is enabled. Quick sign is our version of a really quick click wrap kind of signature, but it has none of the weaknesses of a click wrap. It is fully auditable, it is tamper proof, and yet it is as fast as a click wrap. And what we call it is a quick sign. So for the first invitee here, or the first signer here, we have configured a quick sign. For the second signer here, we have configured an Aadhaar e-sign. So this will allow you to see two very different kinds of journeys, and it will help you get a flavor of the flexibility of the platform, and it will help you decide what kind of flow that you want to build for your own signers. So these are the two kinds of signatures that are configured. Again, all of this is done on a one-time basis in the workflow itself. For you, when you're running a workflow for a particular customer, all you need to do is key in the variable data, right? So let's quickly do that. We'll enter the name of the borrower, key in their mobile number. So we have our quick signer configured. Let's really quickly configure our Aadhaar eSign signer as well. Okay. Now with the Aadhaar eSign, we also wanted to give you a flavor of some additional options that you can leverage with Leegality. One key security feature that we've introduced is the capability to perform a face match. So what this allows you to do is pass any official ID of the customer or a photograph of the customer that you have from your KYC process. And once you pass this to us, we will ask the customer or the signer to perform a face capture, and we will match the face against the face in your system, right? This ensures that the signer is actually present and they are doing the journey themselves. This is a very useful feature if you have a lot of organizational focus on auditability and security. So we just wanted to quickly show you that feature as well. So we've enabled that in the Aadhaar eSign flow. And lastly, we've also configured an automated signature here. This is a signature that will be applied automatically. This is typically used for your banks or financial institution side of signature. So nobody needs to repeatedly do a signature over and over again. You can just pre-configure it and it will be automatically applied once the borrowers have completed the flow at their end, right? So once we've done all of this, we are ready to move to the next step. You can preview the document and then quickly send it out. Right, so that's it. All we had to do was pass the data specific to the customer, and we've created a document that's ready for signing now. So let's see how the journey will look like for your borrower who's going to acknowledge and receive the key fact statement here, right? I'm going to quickly toggle to my WhatsApp screen. If you see this, we had actually enabled a WhatsApp notification mode for your signers. So you can see that there is a notification that has been sent on WhatsApp asking the borrower here to e-sign the document. The message also specifies and carries an expiry date. Calling back to the requirement that Aditya had flagged, you need to give a specific time to the borrower to sign, to agree and read and process the KFS. So using Leegality, you can customize this, and the customer also gets to know exactly how much time they have to review and sign the document, right? So another little feature that helps you comply with the KFS guidelines. Let's quickly hit e-sign and perform authentication. So this is the signing journey. The look and feel of the journey is customizable as per your brand colors and your brand logo. So there's a logo here that this can be customized as per your requirements. The colors can be as per your brand colors. You can change the language on the user interface, a very important feature of our platform that helps you comply with the requirements of the RBI guidelines, which say that you need to give a local language interface to the user. So this toggle allows you to control the entire user interface of the journey in the language that you want. So customers can select whatever language that they're comfortable with. For instance, here the language of the button here on the bottom right has changed. So this allows the signers a great degree of control. You can also change the language of the template itself on Leegality. The template here, we have an English language template, but this template can also be created in local languages, whether it's Hindi, whether it's Malayalam, Tamil, or any other language that you want to use. And you can just create those separate templates in those individual languages and create workflows for each of those templates. Let's quickly see how the journey is in Hindi. So we can click on proceed and quickly click on sign the document. Right, so that's it. It's a super fast journey. The mandatory number of clicks here are just 3. There is no additional OTP authentication layer. There is no friction for the user at all. It's as quick and as seamless as a click wrap that you may be currently using, but this comes with the added benefits of auditability and having a tamper proof document that is acknowledged and digitally and signed by the customer. So that's really as fast as it gets in terms of having a quick sign done. Let's toggle back and see what the status of the document is on our control panel on the details page. So here you can see that the first signer has signed the document. You can track this data from this page on a real-time basis, and you will also get updates via APIs if you have an integrated flow. Now, once that sign is done, the next signer automatically gets activated. So we can quickly see how that journey will also look like, right? So the next type of journey that we are going to see is the Aadhaar
So,
e-sign.
Dant,
Yeah,
I think there was one question received a minute back. I think on the
yeah,
parameters, I think we'll answer it here because we're in the document journey.
sure.
Is about would the parameters, the dynamic fields get translated into languages other than English along with the template? So I
Right.
think, yeah. So
No. So the answer to that, so that's a very good question. The answer to that is no at the moment. The dynamic fields will continue to remain in English. It's the other text, the static text that gets converted into local languages, but not the dynamic values that are going into the agreement. This was also a conscious call that we had taken, because when it comes to understanding the variable data, which is typically in the form of numbers, right, in terms of whether what's the interest rate, what is the loan amount, our research and study suggested that people are actually, whilst they may want to read otherwise in the local language, they want to see the numbers in English only. That's what they are familiar with. So it may actually be counterproductive if we start showing all the variable numbers in local languages as well. That it's for the customers in terms of understandability and readability, those values are preferred to be in English language itself. So to answer the question, the static content can be modified into local languages, but the dynamic content, the dynamic data will remain in English.
ultimately, also for dynamic data, to be honest, depends on what you push to us. So, right, Sid, if I'm not wrong, like the
Yeah, you can push it in a number of languages, Patel, but the support at our end is for
got it.
English language. Yeah.
Understood. Another question actually similar to this is, we showed how the interface changes, we showed how the custom consent changes, but the language of
Yeah.
the KFS itself did not change when you change the language. So I think we'll cover this in the next signing flow. So just answer that question also when you're showing the language and why that is the case.
Sure. Absolutely. Cool. So now that our quick sign journey is over, we can take a look at the Aadhaar eSign journey. This is another way of getting your acknowledgement on your key fact statement, which is more secure and goes through more layers of authentication. So you may want to consider this also depending on your requirements.
Siddharth, one more question. Sorry, because questions are coming in fast on the face
Yeah.
match that you showed. If the
Yeah.
signer has a KYC with their old photo, so if you guys recall, Siddharth showed that there was a face match possible. I think you're showing face match with this. Are you
Yeah,
showing
I
face?
am.
Okay, just
I am
answer
showing.
that question. What happens in the case of an old photo when you show face match?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let me answer that in the course of the demo. Actually, I'll
Sure.
I'll cover that specific point. So here, let's get into the Aadhaar e-sign really quickly. This is a slightly different way of configuring the journey where the customer gets to choose the language upfront instead of being shown the language in a particular language that you have selected upfront, like English. So here, I first get to select the language of my choice, and then the document and then the user interface gets rendered in that specific language. The document, as the question from the audience suggested, the document will remain in English. As I had pointed out previously during the quick sign demo, if you want the template to also change, then what you should do is you should create specific workflows for each language, right? So this is a scalable model that we've seen working for lakhs of transactions on a daily basis for customers who've already implemented local language flows. So you create, let's say, 10 workflows with 10 different templates, and each template is in the relevant local language where you freeze the language upfront, right? So depending on the geography that you're operating in, you can then pass the Marathi language workflow, or you can trigger the Kannada language workflow or the Hindi language workflow depending on your requirements, right? So that is one way to achieve the ability to show this document itself in a local language to customers. The other way in which you can configure this is that you have a single document with multiple languages, right? So what you can do is, here we have an English language KFS. You can actually stack multiple languages here one after the other. So you can have an English template followed by a Hindi template, followed by a Marathi template, followed by a Kannada template, all of which is a part of a single template. So the customer can actually see the template in whichever language that they choose. So that option also exists for you. So you can configure this in a way that you want. But of course, the way that we've seen this implemented more often is to have separate workflows for each language, wherein you can even pre-configure the language in which you want the journey to be rendered, right? I hope that answers the question on how to control the language of the template itself. Now hitting on proceed and going ahead. So the next step here is a payment collect process. This is another interesting feature which we wanted to highlight to you. If you are stamping documents or collecting other fees from customers, which you want to collect from the end signers as well, then you can directly collect money from the customers in our signing journey itself. We have payment gateways integrated in our journey, and this is how it works. The customer gets a payment prompt. They get to see what the amount payable is and what the payment is for. So here, payment towards stamp duty procured as per legal requirements, and the customer needs to click on pay online, and a payment gateway opens up, and you can pay using any of the options that are available to you, right? So this would be something that you would have seen in many e-commerce or quick commerce applications, some like a payment gateway integration like this, but we offer this inside our signing journey as well. So let's quickly just go through this demo payment. So that's it. The payment is successful. We support any payment method that is supported by the payment gateway concerned. Currently, we have live integrations with Razorpay and BillDesk. So if you are on any of those portals, you can set this up really easily. Payment collection is done here, and we are ready to move to the next step. Now here, we'll be performing a face capture. We prepare the signer for what's coming ahead in terms of giving them some instructions. Let's quickly hit proceed. The system will prompt me to move my face within this oval. This is a key part of a liveliness check that happens. Ensures that you can't this ensures that you can't just hold up a photo in front of the camera and bypass it or spoof the signer. So here, face match was successful. Now, one question we got was, what if the photo is very old, the reference photo is very old, or your ID is very old? This works very seamlessly. If you noticed, the document that I uploaded was my PAN card that is more than a decade old. I look very different in that photo, and for example, I don't even sport any eyewear there. I don't sport a beard there. So there's a lot of change in the facial structure from the reference image and the image that is being captured. But the system is smart enough to recognize that and account for that, right? So I'm not being blocked here. It's matching my identity correctly, and I can proceed ahead. Now, once we've done this, we are ready to go for the actual Aadhaar e-sign process where we will be performing Aadhaar authentication. So let's give consent and move to that step. So here again, this is the Aadhaar e-sign flow with an ESP called Protean. But the key thing that I want to flag here is that even this screen is now customizable as per your brand guidelines. So if you see the banner here, this banner can be customized as per your brand colors. The button here of send OTP can be customized as per your requirements. You can also enter your logo here in the space in the middle. So your logo will come here. We believe this gives you greater control on the look and feel of the signing journey and further enhances your trust in the minds of the customer. So this is another new feature that you can use. But let's quickly perform Aadhaar authentication. Lots of you would be super familiar with this. I have to enter my Aadhaar number, and I will get an OTP to my Aadhaar linked file and email. So I'm just waiting for the OTP to come through. Whilst we wait for the OTP to come, wanted to talk about a couple of differentiators that we have with respect to this flow. If for any reason the flow is down, we have automatic redirections to other. These are those entities which carry out this authentication. So Protean is one, but we support multiple ESPs, and we have automated backups that take you to other ESPs depending on the overall success rates and drop off rates that we keep monitoring on a real time basis, right? So this process is highly optimized for conversions with legality. If there is any issue that is ongoing on the network side, we have a lot of checks and balances in place to ensure that customers don't end up dropping off. So I've got the OTP and I've entered the OTP. We are ready to go ahead. Whilst we wait to get redirected back to legality, what we saw here was the OTP based Aadhaar e-sign process, but there are other authentication modes that we have as well. For example, we support biometric, face, and iris based authentication on Aadhaar e-sign as well. So if there are those of you who do branch based flows or MFI flows, if your customer base is more comfortable with a biometric signing, then that is also supported via legality. Right. Signing is now complete via the Aadhaar e-sign as well. Let's quickly refresh our uh, control panel. And there we go. We have collected all signatures here. What you would notice is that not only did the first two signatures get completed, we actually saw that the third one also got completed, right? This was the automated signature that our system applies. So as soon as the borrowers have completed their part of the journey, you can apply your side of the signature as well, and then send the final audit trail to the customer and the signed document to the customer, right? So this allows you to perform the entire paperwork journey in a highly automated way. And the customer, I'm just going to quickly show you this final WhatsApp message that the customer also gets, which has the audit trail and the signed document, right? So this creates that final end-to-end trail that is very valuable for your auditing processes, to demonstrate that you've complied with the regulations. And just so that we tie up the loop here, let's quickly see the audit trail as well. Quickly downloading this. So here we can see that we have a signed audit trail that is shared with all the parties. This audit trail has a step-by-step record of everything that happened in the journey. And most notably here, the thing I want to flag is that it records the consent that the customer had provided in the language that the customer had provided consent. So this will really help you in your, whenever there is an audit happening, that yes, you did provide the KFS to the customer. The customer did open the KFS and read it. They did sign the KFS using this particular method, and this is the consent that they provided, and this and the credentials on which they were notified about the signed document and the audit trail, right? If you perform a face authentication, the details of the face capture are also covered here. If you perform an Aadhaar authentication, then the Aadhaar eSigned certificate that is generated is also captured in the audit trail here and displayed here. And the best thing about all of this is that this is a document that is digitally signed by Leegality, which means that this is tamper proof, right? This is not just an Excel report that can be fudged and manipulated. This is a digitally signed document which acts as a single source of truth for you to demonstrate compliance, right? So that's all in terms of the key features that we wanted to highlight in the demo. You will be able to see the document and audit trail on the dashboard at each step. If you are interested in an API integration, the signed document and audit trail is also passed back to you via API and webhook calls. So the entire flow can be run from within your LOS or LMS as well, if that is the kind of flow that you want to set up. I hope that gave you an idea of how to comply with the KFS guidelines using our portal. There are multiple kinds of e-signs that are available. You can mix and match. One important thing actually is that you can mix and match the journey here. So we saw a quick sign and then we saw an Aadhaar e-sign with face match, but you can do it the other way around as well, right? You can add things on the quick sign layer where you may not want an OTP, but you want to carry other additional authentications, or you may have want to have an Aadhaar e-sign where you don't want that face match layer, right? There is full customizability in this journey for you. You can pick and choose the features that you like that are suitable for your requirements and stitch up an entirely custom flow which is built on all the modern stacks that are available to you, which is a WhatsApp notification, a face match with liveliness check, as well as a highly customized signing journey that reflects your brand guidelines. So yeah, I think that's it, Aditya, from
Siddhan,
me.
just stay on
Yeah,
screen because we received one question on API integration. So the simple answer is, question was, does Leegality support API integration? Simple answer is yes. If you can just show from the workflow how easy it is to actually download the payload to integrate, um,
sure.
we can actually show how the API integration would actually work. So Siddhant showed you a KFS workflow here, right? Which he's made on the dashboard. He's created it completely on the dashboard and he's run it through the dashboard. Sid, you can explain the payload part.
Yeah, if you want to run an API integration, the first step is the same. You create a workflow on Leegality. And after you create the workflow, what you can do here is download the API payload. So you can download this, and let's quickly check this out as well. So this JSON will contain all the fields that you want to pass to your developers to really do the integration very quickly, right? There is no need to write a lot of code. These are all the variable data fields in this format that we expect, and this depends on your workflow a little bit, but all your developer needs to do is pass this data in this format. So we make it really easy by just allowing you to download the JSON directly and use this in your API integration process. So this is the JSON that can help you get started with the API process. If there are any of you here who use Salesforce for your lending process, then we also have a plugin for Salesforce where you won't even need to do an API integration. We have a ready to go plugin where you can just start an integrated flow out of the box entirely. So that's also something that's available.
Thanks, Sid. And just wanted to highlight, if you want to make any changes to your flow, you don't need to go into the payload Siddhant showed you. You simply make the changes on the dashboard. The payload accounts for it because it runs on the workflow ID. So any changes on the dashboard will automatically reflect in your API integration without any additional coding effort.
Yeah.
Right. Great. Thanks so much, Sid. I think, Shubhash, you can share the deck. I think we have quite a few questions during that demo, which we will take up just now. Before that, I had promised a checklist at the beginning. So here's the checklist. We will, within the next 24 hours, you will receive an email which contains the deck and which contains this checklist. So if you're a compliance team or a legal team person, you can use this checklist. If you're not, you can send it or work with your compliance and legal teams using this checklist. We will also share, I think few people did mention in chat, I did not see that till now, that I perhaps went a bit fast. That's fine. We'll send this recording and we'll also share article we've written about what I spoke about. So in written form as well. So everything I spoke about will be on the recording. Everything I spoke about will be on this deck. And everything I spoke about, we'll also share an article that we wrote, FAQ guide on the KFS guidelines. So you can read that at your leisure as well. Apologies though for speeding through parts of it. And of course, if you want to not wait till October or you want to be scrambling around last week of September, simply speak to us. We'll drop the contact coordinates at the bottom as well. You can also, if you're a legality customer, you have a legality customer success person or a point of contact, simply contact them. If you're not a legality customer, simply drop us an email at enquiry@legality.com or just visit our website. It's all the details on how to reach us are there. You can also reach out to Siddhant or I at aditya@legality.com. We'll drop this in chat, and siddhant@legality.com. We'll also drop that email ID in chat or reach out to us on LinkedIn. Let's dive into the questions. Shubhash, we'll dive into the questions and we'll show this. So this is just if you want to stay updated with stuff like this, where we write a guide, if we write a guide or post a similar session, you can actually scan this, which we'll also share with you on email to opt into our WhatsApp broadcast list. Once every week, once every 2 weeks, we share latest updates about things like the KFS guidelines, latest implementation stories from people who are actually using legality to do a particular type of document compliance, or generally any product or feature updates that we built, right? So you can scan this if you want. Cool. Shubhash, if you can go back, we'll share this again. If you can go back to the checklist and just keep that on screen, I think that will be useful for a lot of the questions. So one question that we received consistently is about stamping, right? Whether the KFS needs stamping. And I think this is because we showed stamping in the demo. And another question was that agreement is stamped, then why are we actually showing stamping for a KFS demo, right? So completely agree with you. There is nothing in the rules about the KFS being stamped. But fundamentally, if you are getting the KFS and the loan agreement stamped in this, assigned in the same kit as a unified kit, then you will still need a stamp paper for the loan agreement in that kit when it's being e-signed, right? So we showed you stamping as an option for those types of flows. Fundamentally, yes, there's nothing in the rules which talks about KFS being stamped. We showed it in the demo for people wanting a consolidated flow where they'll need to affix a stamp paper for the loan agreement, or if they have DPNs, if they need to affix revenue stamps for those types of kits, right? But yes, you're completely right. People who ask this question, there is nothing in the rules which actually talks about KFS stamping. Shubhash, you can go to the QR code again. People wanted to scan it. Great. The other question was actually questions about how to calculate APR, how to calculate an amortization rate, right, for different loan products. So for this, unfortunately, I cannot answer this question because that calculation matrix is something your legal and compliance teams will need to do in depth. We don't do that for you, nor are we going to represent to you that we can be an accurate source for any figures about calculation, right? We'll help you run the process in a compliant way. We'll help you run the process in an operationally friendly way. But unfortunately, can't answer questions on what the exact rates will be. So that you will need to take up internally. Second, whether Leegality will do the calculation at the back end. No, not right now. We just manage the document execution process. However, in a few months, we will be coming out with a feature where you can actually configure these calculations for variable parameters. You can actually configure certain calculations as rules in the backend to ensure that your field officer doesn't have discretion to actually, or doesn't need to actually do the calculation. So more on that in a few months when we launch that. But right now, the short answer is no. We can't do that. Okay, Shubhash, you can go back to the checklist and we'll come back to this QR code as well. Don't worry. Another question is, does the KFS, and this is about applicability. So Shubhash, if you can go to the first slide, which talks about applicability of KFS. Does the KFS, so people are asking different things. Does the KFS apply to a particular type of loan, right? So the KFS guidelines, what they say, right? And this is our reading of it. This is exactly what they say, is that the new KFS guidelines are applicable to all retail and MSME term loans. Retail and MSME term loans. So for questions that asked about wholesale lending, they will apply to wholesale term loans as long as they are MSME term loans. So if the wholesale term loan is not an MSME, then our reading is that the KFS rules will not apply. So it's a loan to a corporate that's not an MSME. These guidelines won't apply. But if it's a wholesale loan to an MSME, then they do apply. Similar for retail, right? Retail and MSME term loans. So whatever you classify as a retail or MSME term loan, it applies to that, right? Think about it this way. Any loan where there is an interest term, where there is a repayment schedule, right? Good rule of thumb, where you are giving a particular facility with particular terms in mind, right? With a particular duration in mind, right? And it's either retail or it's a wholesale, but for MSME, then the KFS guidelines apply. They don't apply to anything else, right? And for some reason, they've specifically carved out an exception for credit card debt in the KFS guidelines. So all of this applies. It doesn't apply to credit card debt. So yeah, so for auto loans, vehicle finance loans, we've had many banks and NBFCs come to us saying in their view, KFS does apply to vehicle finance loans, which makes sense because those would be classified as retail loans, right? Many are using it for their MSME loans. Many are using it for their gold loans. So the answer, whether it's applicable to wholesale, to be honest, depends on whether it's a MSME term loan, right? Whether the entity is an MSME. And retail, obviously, it's a large universe of loans that are classified as retail. If it's a term loan, then yes, it does apply. The KFS guidelines do apply, right? Because the idea of the KFS is to provide the borrowers and you a single source of truth for what actually are the financial terms of this loan, right? Unfortunately, the rules don't specify more, but this is our reading of the rules, right? So internally, simply have this matrix, right? If you're looking at a loan product and seeing, hey, does this KFS guideline apply? Simply look at, is it for an MSME? Yes. And is it a term loan? Yes. Then it applies. In retail loans, simply look at, do you internally classify this as a retail loan? Is this a retail loan as per you? If it is, then the KFS applies, right? I hope that answered the question. I know it may not have been as specific as you would have liked, but we don't want to read too much into the rules as well. Just want to go by what the rules actually say. So there are some questions on, so I'll just go through the questions, but meanwhile, actually, we'll also give people a chance to verbally ask questions. So we'll go through all the questions asked in chat, but we'll also go through questions asked verbally as well. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll give you mic access. So I think we have one hand raised. And there are a few questions I've not answered yet. I will come to them as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Rakesh.
Yeah, hi. quick thing, you mentioned something about application forms. Now, KFS is something which is signed at the last stage. Okay, and there will be many applications which have been rejected, and after that the sanction happens, and after that the KFS is printed and shown to the member. Of course, the discussions happen numerous times before that. Like in MFI, there is something called as a CGT, GRT, and all those things which happen.
Right.
So they are verbal discussions. So obviously, a signed agreement is a document is required, which is your KFS. But then by the time the KFS comes, we don't have anything like an application form because everything is in digital form. And there's nothing like a application form which we have. So is it compulsory? That's my question.
No, the application form is not compulsory for KFS. You just need to ensure that the KFS
number that I'm talking about, application
unique
form
proposal number. So yes, if you can go to that slide. Yeah, so the KFS guidelines say that the KFS, right, needs to have a unique proposal number. Now, there are two ways of reading this. One way is that now all KFSs mandatorily have a unique proposal number that is for that KFS alone. The other is at the stage of application for a loan, which you said is oral or verbal, right? But the loan will still have a loan reference number, right? At the stage of sanction.
We have a loan ID. Instead of an application form number or a proposal form number, once the loan is sanctioned, there is a unique loan ID. So that is obviously there in the KFS. So is it not sufficient?
That's a good question. Siddhant, any thoughts on that? So to be honest, Rakesh, I'll be quite honest. Given this as unique proposal number, I would say what you said makes sense because it is a unique number that like applies. But at the same time, given the provision says that the KFS needs a unique proposal number and then they can reject the KFS and then the fresh KFS would need to have a new unique proposal number. You could also
but the same thing happens with loans also, right? The loan sanction also, they get rejected. So the loan ID gets rejected.
Loan ID gets refreshed as well. So Rakesh, to be
for that matter, the loan ID does not get generated on. If the sanction is rejected, the loan ID does not get generated. And that's the end of the story.
So I think what you're saying makes sense. I think from a purpose-oriented perspective, ultimately the same purpose is achieved because the KFS has a unique number that gets renewed. To be honest, I don't know what the RBI here means by unique proposal number. They've used these three words. I don't know if they mean
access. No, if you have access to them, maybe you could put a query.
Sure, we'll do some more research on this. So, like, unsatisfying answer, but I don't know if that what you're like. I don't know if the unique loan number would suffice because the RBI has not specified what unique proposal number specifically means in the rules. Let me just go through the quickly see the rules. The RBI has not specified this unique proposal number or defined it as well. That is a great question, and I don't think we've answered it in this webinar. And I don't think I can answer it on the spot as well, because what you said purposefully makes sense that it's a unique number. But again, we don't know what the RBI means by unique proposal number. So this is probably something for anyone who has access to the RBI. We will also try to get the answer in representations that you may make. Do ask about this, whether KFS unique proposal number needs to be separate from the loan reference number, right? Whether both need to have unique numbers. Ideally, no, but that's of course my view. Yes.
Yeah, another question on that DPN. So currently DPNs are all on revenue stamp, which are physical.
Right.
If we have a DPN soft copy, we can upload it and you will have a revenue stamp affixed, a digital revenue stamp.
Right. Yeah, Rakesh, you can do that. But an easier way would be we can procure and digitize the DPNs from you completely in the backend. So you don't even need to do the upload process. So you simply place an order with Leegality and we'll do that entire process with you. At the same time, we do have an upload stamp functionality as well, where it should be possible. We'll solution this a bit. So we'll reach out to you to fully work out the details of how this can be done. Both flows have a particular solutioning that needs to be done.
Yeah, we would like to have a demo on the DPN part because I think we're using the agreement upload, but the DPN upload, I didn't know about that. So we are doing it manually now. Physically.
Makes sense. Okay, that can definitely be digitized. In fact, we've digitized about 7 lakh DPN so far, like Leegality, since we launched the feature last year. So we'll reach out to you and let's do that demo ASAP. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rakesh. So Deepak also has a question hand raised. So after Deepak's question, I'll take some of the questions in chat. So people who are waiting in chat for your question to be answered will answer it right after Deepak's question. Deepak, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to check since this directions terms loan basically, and loan is a generic term. But in respect to, certain credit facilities also comes into pictures like
Correct.
overdraft against fixed deposit, overdraft against mutual
Correct.
funds. Like that. So are these comes under purview of these directions or how is it?
So can you specify on the mutual fund part? I missed that part.
Overdraft against mutual funds also will be there. So
Overdraft
certain
against.
credit facilities are there. So let's say loan
Right.
securities.
Rules
these
do not specify. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So the rules do not specify what is the term loan. In our reading, so I can only tell you our reading and I'll tell you the logic behind the reading. It would apply to credit facilities as well. If they have an interest rate clause, if they have a particular tenure of that facility, then KFS would need to be provided before providing that facility as well. So our reading is that because we are taking a slightly more cautious reading of the RBI rules, because in the event of ambiguity, the fundamental purpose of the rules we look at, and the purpose of those rules are, did the borrower have full 100% knowledge of the type of credit product or the terms with which they are entering into this relationship with the lender, right? So in the absence of more specificity in the rules themselves, our reading, and for the logic I mentioned, is that this would apply to credit facilities as well if they have an interest rate and they have a particular tenure, right? Ultimately, yes, I'll go back to my usual refrain of do check this out with your compliance teams or do further research on RBI guidelines. Me personally, after this webinar, I will also look back at other RBI rules to see if RBI has specifically defined term loans as a very specific thing somewhere, or is it a more open-ended? So we'll also do that, and we'll definitely email you if we find any answer with any more specificity. Our reading right now of the guidelines is that this will apply to credit products as well, as long as they're retail and MSME related. Not just specifically, okay, this is a loan agreement, but also an overdraft facility as well. That's our reading right now for the logic I mentioned to you. But we will definitely do some more research on specific definition of term loan, whether there is any ambiguity to it or whether it's really truly specific. And we'll get back to you on that. Our reading right now is it would apply more broadly to credit in general. If anyone else has a different answer actually on this, please do raise your hand. And if you have any more specificity to this answer, please do raise your hand. Happy to hear from you as well. To Deepak's question. Deepak, I hope this gives you some more clarity, maybe not full clarity.
Yes,
Because
we also had same way. But how specifically we wanted to define it actually, whether it is
Right.
applicable or not applicable, since
Right.
the nature of the product is not like a term loan. So
Correct.
that's it. I will write to you separately. And
We will also write to you. We'll also do some research because I think preparing this also we realize that it's very ambiguous as to what it applies to, because it's not like it says this applies to all retail and MSME term loans. But the purposive interpretation could mean that it's also credit facilities, advances, and things like that. Rakesh, I think your hand is still raised. So do you have an answer to that question or? Okay. Great. But Deepak, we'll also do our research, and to all attendees on this webinar, I think these questions are great because they tell us where there are certain gaps and ambiguities that we need to further answer. So we will also do some research on this and email you like further FAQs answering these specific questions. I think there was one question. I remember this question. Yeah, in open questions. Right. So one question is on the acknowledgement part. If we add an acknowledgement clause in the loan agreement, can we jumble up the requirement consent along with e-signing of the loan agreement? So the way I read this question is that if KFS is part of the loan agreement, can there be a master consent page, say for both the loan agreement and KFS, on which the acknowledgement is taken, right? Shubhash, you can go back to that provision on acknowledgement. Great question. So what the guidelines say, again, I'm just going to go by the letter of what they say, is that the contents of KFS shall be explained to the borrower and acknowledgement shall be obtained that he or she has understood the same. So the acknowledgement that has to be obtained is that the borrower says that I have understood the KFS. Technically, it does not say that the acknowledgement should be on the KFS itself. If the KFS is part of the kit, the borrower just has to specifically consent to the KFS, right? So one, in a digital flow, to be honest, it doesn't matter, because in a digital flow where it's combined, you actually sign the entire envelope, right? The e-signature applies to the entire envelope wherever the KFS is, right? So there, honestly, it will affix on the KFS itself visually. You will definitely need to have a clause where the borrower signs to that clause saying, I have specifically acknowledged the KFS and I understand the same. Now, where in chronology, where does this apply in the kit? If it's a unified kit, there should be no problem on a unified page that I have also understood the terms of the KFS. There should be no problem there. But fundamentally, in a digital flow where it's unified, you will visually be able to very easily have it on the KFS itself without any effort or any additional cost as well. So to be on the safe side, just ensure the signature coordinates appear on the KFS as well. That's what we would do. There is no additional cost implication there. There's no additional operational implication there. It's just a benefit of the digital process that you can do that very easily. In a physical process where you have them as two separate documents, our reading would be that you should collect the acknowledgement on the KFS itself, because the RBI is being very specific here that you need to provide a KFS and collect an acknowledgement. And so while technically you can collect acknowledgement separately saying, I have understood that KFS, the rules technically do not bar that. Our reading would be that given RBI is emphasizing KFS very specifically, you collect that acknowledgement on the KFS itself. So in our reading, I would not jumble it up. That's my reading, and I've told you the logic why. That's our reading of it. Hope that answers the question. Although on the words itself in the rules, there's nothing that prevents what you mentioned. Our reading is that we would not do that because RBI is very specifically bringing up KFS and emphasizing on KFS. Hope that answers the question. Do raise your hand if it doesn't answer the question, or re-ask any clarification you need. So there's a question on, so one is, yes, KFS apply to MSME term loans. Yes, they do apply to MSME term loans. What about MSME working credit loans? Again, answered that in the ambiguity around term loans. We will do some further research on that. Our view would be yes, right now, take it as applying to that, just to be on the safe side. Sid, there's one question about the language change that you showed. Yeah.
Which specific question is it?
There was no condition in Hindi, whereas the audit trail showed acceptance of the condition in Hindi, as this was chosen as a preferred language. I think we went a bit too fast. So you can quickly show how the consent itself changes when you change the language to Hindi. So to answer that question, the condition did actually change into Hindi. Sid will just quickly show that again. While you do that, Sid, there's one question. Do you have a legal team who can help us redraft various agreements with all the required clauses for vehicle and MSME finance? Short answer is no. Long answer is because fundamentally we are not a law firm. We are a product company building a product to ensure you can build a compliant digital document execution flow. While we do have a legal team, they will not be able to help you redraft. But we can definitely connect you with stellar law firms, and we do have a wide network of law firms that we work with. So if you reach out to us, we will definitely be able to refer you to some very good law firms who will be able to help you with this. One question also here in local language, I think important to emphasize, is when the customer chooses the preferred language after opening the document, the language on the document did not change. That is correct, because the document is a template, and the document, when it's with the customer, should be in an unalterable state, because if it could be altered, there could be a lot of issues there. So what you can do there, I think Sid will explain while he's explaining local languages.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
So here, to answer the question that was raised, if you change the language, then proceed. So now this consent is also in local language here. So depending on which language the user has selected at the time of signing. This button right at the bottom is a sign document button, which you are seeing in Hindi right now. But if it's because in the demo we did this journey in Hindi because the local language was in Hindi, the same consent got pasted into the audit trail as well, right? So that's how the language selected by the customer gets reflected in the consent language and also gets reflected in the audit trail. And I think, Aditya, to answer the earlier question, yes, the language of the document itself doesn't change. But I think one point we addressed in the demo was that you can build this template in a way where instead of just having an English language template, you can stack it up with multiple languages. So you have an English language template followed by Hindi language, followed by Malayalam, all of that in the same template. So the user can switch to the relevant language that they want and then perform. Or alternatively, the other way to do this is to just create different templates and workflows for each language and then specify the language in the workflow itself, right? So there will be a complete Malayalam journey, there'll be a complete Hindi journey, a complete Kannada journey, which will have everything in that language only, including
I think
the
go back to the
document.
workflow screen. It will help, I think, to illustrate
Yeah.
that.
So on this, so you can similarly create any sort of workflow in any language. So if we want to see this, what we do is we select a local language template, and then here what we do is we specify the language here itself in the workflow, right? So instead of running the workflow in English or allowing the user to select the language while running workflow, we can just specify the language here itself, right? So for example, we specify Tamil or Kannada depending on what language we are dealing with. Let's say Tamil, then that's the language that will get selected by default when the signing journey is opened, and that way you can control the entire flow. I hope that answers the question.
Now I have a question. Can I relate it to this? Can I ask?
Sure, Rakesh.
Okay. Now we have templates in different languages where we have uploaded it, but we have given different names on our own. We just link those names to these languages.
Rakesh, I think last 5 seconds just dropped slightly.
Yeah, okay. What I was saying is we have different languages which are uploaded in this thing, but we have given them different names. Okay, of course, now the names are related to the languages itself, but then can we link those names to these languages? If somebody wants to select Hindi, they can directly select this Hindi option of yours and upload it. So there is lesser confusion.
Sid, just go back to the workflow.
Yeah.
So right now you will have to hard code. So with the workflow, right now, you will, so if I got your question correctly, it's that they just have to select it and it automatically pulls that document. Is that the question? If they select it. So right now you'll have to hard code different workflows. So you'll have to have a Hindi workflow, a Kannada workflow, and you'd have to in those say that this template, specific Kannada template will be used in that workflow. It won't change dynamically.
We have different templates which are already created. Okay. But we like this is a filter which you have kept here in between, which states language. Whereas we don't have a filter. We have used appropriately file names or template names with the help of which people are using it.
Understood.
But if we get a filter option also, it becomes easier. That's what I'm asking.
Understood.
Right. So I think for that, just to answer that, Aditya, what you can do on Leegality, the first step actually on Leegality is that you create all your templates here, right? So for example, this template is called key fact statement, but you can create additional templates which are in Hindi, Malayalam, etc. So those templates can be called whatever you want, right? So you can call that template a key fact statement Hindi, key fact statement Malayalam, key fact statement Kannada, so on and so forth. And then, so let's maybe just try to do this right now.
That's exactly what we've done for the agreement. But my question is, can we use this filter in addition to that?
So I'll just show you what you can do. So right now, for example, this is in English. I can, let's assume this is in Hindi. So I name this as Hindi and then save it. Right now, if I go to workflows and let's find our key fact statement workflow. Right, so here I can now search by Hindi and I can see which Hindi templates I have, select them and map them to the workflow. Similarly, if I have Kannada workflows, then I can map them here, search them here as Kannada and then map them. So that is the functionality that is available right now, where you will have to create templates for each language. You can name them with specific languages that you want, so you call them Hindi, Malayalam, Kannada, and then you search it here, map that particular template to a particular workflow. That's what's available as of right now.
So Rakesh, the language filter that you saw in the demo, that is currently not available. But if you're using it through an integrated journey, through an app, for example, like through your own field app, there are ways that through this workflow architecture, you can build a similar interface that you mentioned on that side. So I think in the demo where we go deeper into revenue stamp, we can probably take up this as well on how you can do that through the API.
Thank you.
But yeah, right now on dashboard, it's not possible. I think one question we received while you were showing that Sid was, can we convert the local language to English while generating KFS template or vice versa? So the answer is no. The templates, you will basically need to pre-configure each workflow depending on the language beforehand. There's no way to dynamically translate the template for each journey. The template remains fixed. So if you operate across India, you will have a KFS Kannada, KFS Hindi, KFS English, KFS Tamil. You will have all of them. And you will, let's say your Tamil Nadu branch, you want them to only have access to the KFS Tamil templates, right? If it's an API integrated journey, it's very easy because in the API integration, you will configure it such that the Tamil Nadu branch applications, when they select it or based on the customer ID, it only passes the Tamil Nadu workflow. In Karnataka, it will only be the Kannada workflow, right? The Tamil workflow, the Kannada workflow. And there's various other configurations you can do with the API as well. But you cannot dynamically translate the document. You will have to store those documents in different workflows before you start this flow or start this digital journey. Yes. So one question was, we will share the KFS format with you in the email. We will share this deck with you. We will share our FAQ guide with you. We will share this recording with you. And we'll also share, I think people were asking for the final document and the audit trail. Sid, if would it be possible that we can share that also with the final email?
We have several samples available, Aditya, so we can share those.
Sure. So we'll share those as well with you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? And if I have missed any questions, you're going through chat once more. Apologies because there were a lot of questions on chat. So I may have missed one or two. I think I've got all of them, but may have missed one or two. Sid, you took the KYC old photo question, right?
Yes, that we answered in the
answered in the face demo. Yeah, I'm just going through the list.
Aditya, also check out the answer tab of the Q&A.
I'm doing that. Yeah.
Questions.
Yeah. So again, all questions about APR calculation, what type of APR calculation, what stamp duty on particular APR, that is for your legal team. We can connect you with law firms if needed, but we don't venture into providing opinions on those questions. One question, I don't know if they are still on call. Is it mandatory to get e-sign of the customer on the KFS or just an acceptance by clicking on an accept CTA can do, right? So e-sign specifically is not mandatory, like you don't need an Aadhaar e-sign on the KFS. But e-sign is just a convenient way to collect an auditable, verifiable, and enforceable acknowledgement, right? Because fundamentally, KFS acts as your single source of truth. KFS will be very important in enforcement. KFS is something that RBI will look at. Are you collecting acknowledgement in a proper way? When DPDP Act comes, then that's a whole different can of worms, which we'll come to later. So the accept CTA, ordinarily what we've seen is the accept CTA is not something that's auditable, verifiable, or enforceable, right? There's no audit trail behind it. There's no definitive way to say that, hey, this person has clicked on accept. That it's not the agent who has clicked on accept, it's that person who has clicked on accept, right? There's no way to actually do that. There's no way for RBI to audit that the accept CTA was validly clicked on. So according to us, the accept CTA would not work. unless it's verifiable, auditable, or enforceable. For that, you would have to use an electronic authentication, either a Aadhaar eSign or various modes like quick sign or a OTP authenticated virtual sign or a face match authenticated digital acknowledgement. So in our view, the accept CTA process that's currently followed would not work for KFS in light of these rules. Okay, there is one question. So if we are using the liberal approach, that means the agreement is signed and the loan is dispersed, can a customer come back after 2 days and reject the loan? So no. Shubhash, if you can share that provision, that part about the acknowledgement 3-day validity. The customer will have 3 days to acknowledge and accept the terms of the loan. But after they have accepted it, the 3-day period goes away. You have to give them 3 days to actually sign the agreement. You have to give them 3 days to agree to it. But if they signed it on the same day itself, they don't have the benefit of that 3-day period. So as simple as that. So after they've acknowledged and accepted this 3-day period, there's no question of it. This is 3 days for them to actually read, understand, and then give acceptance to the terms of the loan if they so wish. After they've signed it, this 3-day period is not applicable.
On this, I have another question.
Sure, Rakesh.
As I said, in MFI, there is a CGT and a GRT, and the terms are first verbally explained. Post agreement, then the sanction, and then just before disbursement, this KFS is signed. Now, how does this certain number of days fit in? Because one, there is a date supposed to be printed on the KFS. That's the first question. The second, the date of signature will be there. Yes.
Date of signature will be there. Yes, that will be there.
Will be there. That's
Yes.
there. And in our agreement, in our KFS also, there is a date of
Absolutely.
whatever printing. I think it's called date of printing. So
yes.
So it has to be after 3 days.
Doesn't have to be after 3 days. It's up to the customer. If the customer tells you, you have to explain to the customer you have 3 days. Customer says, no, I'm reading it, understanding it now. I want to sign today. Great. Customer is entitled to that. If customer says, give me 2 days, I'll come back to you, then you have no control. Customer has that time available to them. You just need to ensure that the date on which you are explaining it to the customer is recorded somewhere. In a physical process, it's slightly harder because, as you said, that date of printing and things like that. In a digital process, that's also taken care of in the process, because in the digital process, we don't just record where the sign happens. You also record when the customer actually sees it. You record when it's actually sent to the customer. And if you're doing something like a face capture to ensure, okay, the customer was present, then that date and time of that face capture is also recorded to give evidence that, hey, customer was here on this date, did look at it. In the physical process, yes, you will have to include a date on the KFS to ensure this, and collect date of signing when they sign it physically, mention the date.
Okay, thank you.
Another question that's cropped up, explicit consent for any other charges can be included in the KFS itself. So if you go to the explicit charges, right? So that requirement 7. Next one. No, sorry, requirement 6. My bad. Yeah, requirement 6. So this applies to fees charges which are not mentioned in the KFS, and you cannot charge this to the borrower at any stage except with the explicit consent. So if you include it in the KFS, this provision doesn't apply, right? Like the acknowledgement on the KFS will suffice as charges, right? At the same time, if you're modifying the RBI's template and adding more things, if you still get them, that's fine. The RBI does not say that apart from this, I'm disclosing further things in the KFS. Just ensure that the acknowledgement that is done for the KFS and consent is very verifiable, auditable. So the short answer is yes, you can include those charges in the KFS. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But if you include them separately from the KFS in a separate document, that also needs to have explicit consent. Or if during the term of the loan, you're changing something, you can't do that without the borrower giving you explicit consent. In fact, KFS Annexure B and C also have a list of charges and an amortization schedule. So we'll share the entire template with you in the post-webinar email, which we will send within the next 24 hours. You can reach out to Siddhant or I think our details are in the chat as well. Directly email us. Happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. Happy to talk to you there as well. You can sign up for our WhatsApp facility where you can also talk to us through WhatsApp. That's on the next page. Shubhash, if you can go to the QR code. Scan this, opt in to either WhatsApp or email, and we'll keep you updated. And you can also have a dialogue with us on WhatsApp or email. about regulations, about compliance, about legality itself, about anything else. Cool. One final call for questions. I think we're done. Thank you so much to whoever's still remaining. I think a lot of people did drop off before the Q&A and during the Q&A. But thanks to everyone who attended before, attended now, is still on the call. We will share the recording. We will share the KFS guidelines. We will share a written FAQ guide